Welcome back to the Easy Button Real Estate Podcast with myself and Mr. Tucker Merrihew. Today, guys, we got a fun one. It's the second week of the year, second full business week of the year, and we've done a few group and community calls. We're hearing what you guys are struggling with out there. We're going to talk about that today. Before we do, Tucker, to start this show today, what's going on? I know we haven't been on the mic in a couple weeks. New Year's, Christmas happened. I know the plague hit you, and then what else you got going on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got hit last week. We were going to hop on last week. Obviously, I didn't even have a voice when we were going to do it. And then last week was my birthday too. So I was actually on my, just on my back, my entire birthday, just out of it. Felt like I got hit by a train. But we had a Key West trip planned for the weekend. So I had to kind of nut up and go on the Key West trip day after we were supposed to film. So I didn't have much of a voice, and we all know what happens in Key West. And we went with a few other people. And so I powered through. I wasn't the party animal that I could be, but I powered through, and I think it prolonged this.
Set you back a little bit.
Yeah, it set me back. So this week I'm doing all right. I'm getting through everything I need to do, and I wish I had a little bit more energy and just felt a little bit better. But other than that, I'm doing good. Key West was awesome. First time I've actually been there in the 4 years that I've lived here. I've been to the Keys a few times, but Key West first time. Pretty cool place. It's amazing. The one thing I noticed is that it's like the most condensed amount of people that drink as much as they drink, and you don't see a single fight, pissing match, nothing. Like everybody is just like, their vibe is just, I'm here to just have a good time and whatever, man. And it's hard to recreate that in a lot of places. And I noticed that. So it is a cool place. It's a pretty long drive though. So I think next time we found this little puddle jumper company that'll fly you from Naples to Key West, and it's like a 45-minute plane ride, and it's, ridiculously cheap for, basically flying private. But you get a couple, two other couples to go with you, and it's like, it's the same as riding the ferry, down there. So, the big floating boat in the sea. So I think we're going to do that next time and save ourselves about 4 hours and 15 minutes on commute time to and from, which will be nice. But other than that, we finally got our building permits, which is right here, actually. There it is.
Oh, yeah. There you
for our big new house that we're building. It'll be our most expensive one to date in terms of finished price anyway. And so we had our construction meeting yesterday to kind of go through the construction schedule, finalizing all of our budget stuff right now. I'm putting together, the vertical construction budget. I think I'm going to take some vertical money on that one to build it out, since it's going to be a sizable 7-figure build out budget, and just keep more cash on hand. I think that's kind of the game right now. The more cash you can keep on hand, I think the better, given the market, which we'll talk more about here as we kind of move forward. But I'm excited to get it started. There's quite a bit of inventory on the market. This is going to be a really, really cool house. What it sells for, it's going to have a wide disparity, but somewhere probably between low 5s and low 6s is my guess, which is a big gap, but where it falls just depends on interest rates at the end of the day.
When you're underwriting these, are you looking at like what's my worst case like fire sale number?
Yeah, obviously, and that number has been about the same since we bought the lot. Honestly, I was pretty, I don't want to say pessimistic, but I was pretty conservative on what I thought we'd be able to sell the end product for when we bought it. And the market's probably even gotten, it got a little better, it got a little softer. I don't know. But I think worst case, it's probably better than what I initially ballparked. Now, the cost to build it, we've been going through our budget, whatnot. It's a little more than what I had hoped that we'd be able to do, 4,200 square feet for with this design and the different stuff that we got going on. But we went through it, and we kind of were figuring out, okay, do we really need to spend money here or there? And, there was some extra stuff we were going to do with the pool. I looked at all the comparables, even the stuff that's like $8, $9, $10 million. They weren't doing that stuff with the pool, kind of the extras and whatnot. So we axed that out, and that was 10 or 12 grand right there. So we're going to kind of go through it and just make sure that we're spending the money in the right places so that we get, an amazing product, but we're not overspending, for stuff that, is significantly more expensive, that's new, that doesn't even have it, just because it's just not a necessary thing to do right now in today's market. But it's spec building in a slow market. So here we go.
How long did it take you permitting start to finish on that one?
This one was a biatch. We started. We demoed the house in June, and then I finally got my building permit in day before my birthday, basically. So it was about 6 months worth of headache going back and forth with the city. Now I could probably cut that down by 3 to 4 months, knowing what I know now. But like I mentioned before, nobody's incredibly helpful at telling you that, hey, you need to watch out for this. You need to plan for this ahead of time. There's just a whole lot of like, you screw it up and they send it back. And then that adds to your timeline of fixing it and sending it back in and waiting for some clock puncher to get it back around to looking at it and going, oh yeah, okay, that looks good. We'll clear it now.
When do you break ground?
We're going to break ground in 2 weeks, and we've got a 7-month build schedule.
So that'll be before the end of the year.
Yep, before the end of the year. And hopefully we have it sold shortly thereafter and for a big number. So that's the plan anyway. That's what I keep telling myself.
Well, cool, guys. Well, we're going to get into the show. We're kind of talking pre-show about, some of the questions that have been coming our way from you guys that get onto our, community calls or wherever else we interact with you. And across the board, one of the things I'm finding to be a commonality is a fairly slow start to the year for a lot of people. I did our weekly Q&A call yesterday, and several people in several different markets with several different teams and shops and marketing channels all kind of express the same thing of, hey, it's been a kind of a slower start to January. Tucker, what do you have a thought of why maybe that's happening across the country for people off to a slower start here after the holidays and then they feel like they normally have?
The one piece of data about real estate investing that is always the same, but it's always different, is at what point after the new year do the phones really start ringing, right? And we've had years, where we've done heavy, outbound marketing to generate incoming calls or just, heavy marketing in general for motivated sellers. We've had lots of years doing it. And some years it's literally like January 4th. The phones just blow up, right? It's like, or whatever after New Year's is the New Year's weekend. That next day, it's like all of a sudden people have been sitting on, mails or mail pieces that you've sent or messages you've left them or, whatever. And they're like, all right, time to get back to life. And they start calling. Other years, it'll go to like the 20th. Even into the 20s. And, you've got this 2 to 3 week stretch where you're like, what in the hell is going on? And then it's like you come in one Monday or Tuesday and it's like the phones are just blowing up, right? And it's like you've got 5 people to go see on Thursday and, you're scheduling 5, 6 more for the following week already. Like you got all these things going on. So I don't know that it's necessarily any different. Now, market's different, but I don't know if that piece of data that people are feeling, is going to be any different by the time we get to the end of the month of any other year. I've seen it happen so late in January and I've seen it happen so early in January. And I've been stuck in the middle a number of times where I'm like, what the hell's going on? But it always kind of evens out, is the one thing that I've seen. Now, on the flip side, you've got kind of a weird market right now too, right? So, but not necessarily for selling. I mean, selling is, there's a lot of people that want to sell. Not necessarily those that have a super low interest rate that want to move on to something else, but there's always reasons people want to sell and need money and whatnot. So selling is not necessarily the difficult thing, finding people that want to sell. Selling a property to a full retail buyer is a little bit more challenging right now. So I don't know. I think that it'll all work itself out for most of these people, but I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I mean, I think since COVID, one of the things that I've noticed is like I feel like the holiday season gets longer every year since COVID happened. I don't know why, but I feel like it went from like when I was my first couple of years in the business, 16, 17, 18, 19, and it was like the holidays where, you have Thanksgiving weekend, then you have Christmas and Christmas Eve, and then you have New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. And now I feel like it's Thanksgiving through January 5th. until the world starts coming back online. And I think that's what a lot of it is. I think, and Trump's making more, days around Christmas, federal holidays. Like I think our culture, I think it's cultural. I think our culture has kind of collectively decided. As so much social media content I saw after Christmas of like, hey, the week between Christmas and New Year's, like you're not supposed to do anything. Like, that week's for you to like just sit on your couch and doom scroll TikTok, and like you don't have to be a functional human. Like I saw that everywhere, and even for ads from like companies. And so I think there's this cultural shift because we all, went from being outside all the time for a couple years to like, hey, you have to stay in your house. You have to do these things. Where I think it's just a ripple effect of that period that seems to be getting intensified every single year. So I would say right now it's the 15th. Honestly, I'm still getting slow responses from vendors and from some people. So I would say, I don't think it's, as long as you're marketing, you're doing the work, you're following up, you'll have that spike again. Like it always comes. Like if you've been doing this for a while, it's not just going to all of a sudden not happen. So I do agree that you're going to have this spike again of seller conversations and appointments to go on. But yeah, that's my opinion. I think that's what I've noticed over the past couple of years.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess I agree. I agree. After everybody's got like a 2-year hiatus from life, sometimes the holiday, a couple weeks isn't enough for people. But even before COVID, that's those same data points that I kind of mentioned in terms of phone could start ringing January 5th. It could start ringing January 25th. The same things happened before that as well. So it's just sometimes, like in the Northwest, it can be a little bit seasonal too, like depending on how crappy the weather is, right? Like if it's just gnarly and rainy constantly, like it is normally in December, January, it just kind of limits people's the amount that they get done in any given day, right? And like calling somebody back to talk about selling their house is like a on the to-do list kind of thing, right? It's not like something that unless they absolutely like need money tomorrow, like it's not something that they want to put at the top of the list every single day to do. So it's kind of like one of those things that might get put off and put off. Because the other thing too is that, I would always notice as soon as the sun came out in the Northwest, it was like the phones lit up too, right? Yep. So that had a lot to do with people's productivity or like checking things off their to-do list, whether it be calling to sell their house or whether it be, any number of other things that you got to get done as well, right? So I would just say we're in that weird little window. It'll always swing back. It's just a matter of when it does, and try not to get yourself too freaked out or worked up over the fact that, it's a little quieter as we head out of the kind of holiday season, because it's happened to me plenty of years.
I don't disagree. The second part of that's rates. Obviously, you've seen all the social media frenzy about rates coming down at least below 6% on some graphs and charts and things people are posting around social media. Where do you think that's heading this year with what you've seen about? Did you see the Jerome Powell video?
Yeah. I mean, Jerome Powell's him and Trump got some beef, I guess. That'd be a good way to put it. But I know that, what are rates at today? Did you look at mortgage rate.com?
I don't know. Let me look at it right now.
Because I know they dipped down briefly a couple of days ago to just under 6% when Trump ordered
lowest level since 2022.
Is that what they're saying? Okay.
6.06%.
Okay. So we're hovering, within an eighth of a point of where it was earlier this week as well. Which, just on the downside of 6, just on the upside of 6, which is good. I think we need to get to like 5.75, 5.5. And I think, the great thaw occurs in terms of number of transactions in the real estate market. But I think the 10-year today is still up pretty high. It hasn't dipped down, but the reason why rates are going down is because Trump ordered, a bunch of essentially quantitative easing, which we may have mentioned on a previous show, where we're going to buy $200 billion in mortgage-backed securities, which will push down rates in itself, at least to some extent. And so I think he'll keep pulling that lever as much as he can if he can't get the Fed funds rate down and ultimately the 10-year bond rate to follow. So interest rates are a very vital component past a certain point to the real estate market, as we have discovered, especially on the heels of them being so low, during COVID and whatnot. So I hope we get down to 5.5 ish. That's kind of my target for kind of the great thaw, or whatever it is that they're going to call when the market comes back, and people actually start, at scale, looking to trade homes again, and kind of move up, move down, whatever it is that they're going to do, and they're willing to take a 5.5% 30-year fixed rate in order to do so. But that's it's going to be a big part of the market this year. And that's, obviously, in going into building the house that we're going into right now, we're speculating that we're going to sell it for a decent amount of money, but I can tell you for sure we'll sell it for a lot more money if rates get to 5.5%, because it'll help the overall sentiment of the market, and it'll just increase overall buyer activity, which then we may not even sell to somebody that finances, but it will cause that same person that just can write a check to have to write a slightly bigger check than what they would have otherwise, because there's more people in the market, more fish in the sea kind of looking at your product.
Yeah. I think that it's so psychological. But it's one of those things we talked about last show. We did like the external, locus of control for people. Like, you guys can't control any of this stuff. Like, that's, I was asking Tucker if he has like that fire sale number, because, I think right now you have to buy thinking about worst case and best case. And for a lot of you guys out there sitting on the sidelines right now is still a great time to do deals and pick up deals. It's just being a little more thorough in your underwriting and your due diligence. But kind of moving towards the back end of the show, beyond the market, beyond kind of the slower start to the year, beyond obviously Powell and Trump's issues with their bromance and what they're dealing with.
Did you call it a bromance?
Yeah, their feud. One of the things I've been talking about a lot, actually, the show last week that we put out, and I was talking about this, is this concept of like not living in the middle in a real estate business. And you've talked about this a lot, Tucker. And, there's kind of what everyone does when they get started. And I think a lot of people are struggling with is they're just trying to do as many deals as possible. Trying to put as many, as much revenue as possible on the board. And I talked about this concept. I think there's two real estate businesses that win. I think you either go like really big, or you kind of stay lean and mean and really profitable with a small team. Because every time I see someone going out of business or making money but they don't make it, is because they're in the middle space of, they have a partner or two partners. I've seen a company, a wholesale flip business with 4 partners, and they're doing a couple $1 million a year. They have a big team, a big office, fixed overhead, but variable revenue. And I think that's where real estate businesses go to die. And I talked about a lot last week, and I was curious your thoughts on. We've talked about kind of the different levels before, but more just on for people right now. Because my advice last week was, hey, if you're in that if you're in that lean and mean range right now, and you're doing $1 million, $1.5 million a year, you're building 2 homes a year, 3 homes a year, you're doing 10 flips a year. I don't know if right now is the time to try to go from lean and mean to massive. Because I think people get caught in the middle, and the middle is unprofitable, the middle is stressful. And I think that's where I've seen companies in this business go to die.
Yeah, it's I've never loved that overly big real estate business, to be honest with you. So like, I mean, I'm a little bit partial, but I do agree. It's just like any other business. If you staff it for X and you're doing half of X, it becomes or if you do half of X one month, you do X the next, half of X the next month, X the following month, like it becomes a very stressful business. Real estate's no exception. But, the thing about real estate investing is that you really can run it on a pretty lean operation. I think people feel like they need to have like all these bells and whistles and different things. Like you need a transaction coordinator, and you need a fluffer, and you need a caller backer, and you need a appointment scheduler, and you need all these things, right? And then a lot of times they're paying very little on the labor for a lot of that, because it's VAs and things like that. But then you're also overcomplicating your business, and you're creating a business that has way more touch points than it needs to, and customers talk to quite a few more people than they need to as well, which doesn't help your internal brand and the feel that the customer gets when they do business with you. So I would agree that, in general, should try and keep your real estate investing business as lean as possible until it breaks, right? And then absolutely at that point, look to hire somebody else. But until you break it with the amount of volume that you're pushing through it, I don't see any reason to keep adding onto it and playing this, game of Jenga, where you just keep adding and adding and adding. Like it just, it's, you're really adding a lot of stress to yourself. And especially in a market where, it's easy to grow pretty quickly if you need to, if the market just starts ripping again and you're a master at finding off-market deals, because then you just increase your spend on your marketing, you increase your lead flow, you increase your conversion, and you can sell most stuff, even thin stuff, for profit, right? That then you can help run your machine with, and hopefully you're making more than just enough to run the machine with that stuff. But it becomes a lot easier to generate revenue dollars, gross revenue dollars in a hotter market than in a slower market. Because in a slower market, you're battling for every dollar that you make, right? It's a little easier sometimes to negotiate a better price on a house, but it's harder on the sales side to sell it to the next guy than it is in a hot market. So I would say the leaner that you can stay throughout your career in real estate, the more likely that you're going to stay in real estate. But the leaner you can stay in a slower market, absolutely the better. And one other thing that you mentioned is, like a wholesaling business that has like 4 partners, right? Like there's no fucking reason that a wholesaling business should have 4 partners. Like that just is retarded. Because there's only so many skill sets that each person can bring. And ultimately, and that's the one thing that I've learned about business overall is that, like, if you have a partnership, like you have to bring complementary skill sets, right? You have to bring something your partner doesn't bring, and they have to bring something that you don't bring. And that's what makes a business better. In a wholesaling business, there's only so many pieces that you need in terms of intellectual property and intelligence and like know-how. And so if there's 4 of you, like I'm not really sure how that even works, because like you don't need more than 1 or 2 people max, right? In order to be kind of, and one person,
even 2, I think, is when you really look at a real estate business. Like I think that people just do it out of loneliness, because I think even 2 people was like, what do you really do eventually?
yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. I've never had like a partner in my real estate business. I've had people that have worked for me for years and years and years, and I would consider them, partners in a lot of ways, because without them, we wouldn't have been able to do the stuff that we've done. And I've taken really good care of them, and they didn't care that they weren't a partner because they got taken, well, they were well taken care of. But at the same time, like I always had the freedom of like, I'm the judge, jury, and executioner, right? I make the decision on what we're going to do, how we're going to do it. But I also didn't feel like I needed like another person there after a certain point. Because once you hire a couple of people, hopefully you like them, and then you're not lonely just sitting there by yourself every day. I mean, you're running your business. That'll kind of consume you in a lot of ways. But yeah, if you're just grabbing a partner because you're lonely, like that's a real bad reason to grab a partner for any business, in my opinion. Real estate, especially, because what are you going to do every day? Like once you design your marketing campaigns, and if neither of you guys are picking up the phone and talking to people or going and seeing leads, like what exactly do you do every day?
Yeah, I mean, I was there. You kind of just show up to the office, and you're like, and eventually it gets weird because you go through a season then of like one person doing a lot more work, and then it's hard to, I think, it's hard depending on the situation, the relationship. But for a lot of people, I think that's a hard battle of like, oh, I mean, I should get paid this, or you shouldn't get paid that, or that's what I think. Obviously Jimmy and Will, are the only example of people I know that have been partners for like decades, and like real partners, and it's because they just kind of.
But they've also got layers to their business, right? It's more complex than just a simple wholesaling business, right? They've got a fund,
Yeah,
and they've got
they,
all these things that, I can see why that has worked, because they have had equal vision in terms of like what they wanted it to grow into, and that's an important
they kind of
point.
run their own businesses within the business. Like
Right.
Jimmy runs the brokerage, he runs the the kind of wholesaling, flipping side of things, and Will kind of runs the hard money and some other things. So like they have I think they just understand. They kind of each have their own businesses within the business.
Yeah, which at that point, like, you either need another general manager or you need a partner that can, divide and conquer, right? And I think that in that case, it absolutely makes sense. But that's a much bigger business, right? They run a much bigger business than most people are ever gonna want to run, or will ever run in terms of, real estate.
Yep. Cool, guys. Well, we're going to wrap there today. Thank you guys for sticking around for another episode of the Easy Button Real Estate Podcast. We appreciate you guys. As always, we don't grow this show through anything other than word of mouth and organic, and it's grown tremendously. And we appreciate you guys reaching out, letting us know what you want us to talk about, jumping on our community calls. If you guys aren't in our community, you can join the link below. Or if you need anything else that we do at Easy Button, we'd love to serve you. And until next time, you're only one deal away.